We have this opportunity to be the people that our ancestors will be proud of and our descendants will be grateful to. That is us, and it is our opportunity to find our courage in this moment. Do you want infrastructure for war and for corporations and for oil, or do you want infrastructure for people?
We have built our own infrastructures, solidarities, alliances, connections with other community groups and other peoples who are also facing similar attempted genocides, both historically and also now in the present. And we continue to do this work and to do these sort of creative actions because we are actually trying to complete or finish the unfinished process of the abolition of slavery. And so we are in this process of trying to complete the abolition of slavery, which is not yet done. And in fact, what we're doing is we're using the seeds that we have carried with us over millennia in order to do this, to plant this new garden. These seeds, which are not fungible, they're our bodies. They are not replaceable. They are irreplaceable. We're using our bodies, putting our actual flesh into the streets, resisting these infrastructures that bind and control us, whether they be prison industrial complex, academic industrial complex, medical industrial complex, or otherwise, sort of really using that concept of our bodies as seeds that they tried to use to eradicate us, to actually invert and change the system from within and without.
My offering this time around on this planet is to work very closely with people on figuring through ways that we can take care of ourselves while we do this work. So ashe to the land, I just want you to just touch the earth. Just touch the earth. Imagine the energy that you're giving to the earth right now. And as you're feeling the earth and breathing in and breathing out, I want you now to see the energy that you're receiving from the earth when you breathe in. And I want you to be very conscious of giving the energy to the earth when you breathe out. So we're going to bring that intention. We're going to bring that intention, right? Because this work that we're doing, this give and take, this not take, right? What is it that you have to offer this earth?
These pipeline campaigns, I really feel, have expanded the notion of impacted community, right? Of course, when we're talking about nuclear, we're also talking about uranium mines, and that the impact is extraordinarily intense. But one of the things that really brought the anti-uranium, anti-nuclear movement to the fore was this idea of the transport of the waste, right? All of a sudden, everyone became an impacted community. Everyone felt victimized by this industry and was able to open up their minds and their hearts to hearing a lot more. So aside from it being entirely unwise to invest billions in fossil fuel infrastructure as we are nearing the end of the oil age, aside from the horrors of the tar sands at Ground Zero in Alberta, aside from climate change, of course, posing a huge threat to the livability of the planet, these pipelines are also dangerous.
It's not always obvious when something is wrong. Sometimes it's just in the air and you breathe it in and you're warned hours later that you've been exposed to benzene and carcinogens and biochemicals like that.
This one I found particularly troubling. Apparently the features, which is what Enbridge refers to as the places of corrosion and things like that in the 1/4 inch to 1/8 of an inch thick pipeline that carries this really toxic stuff. There's a lot of false negatives, right? So you guys have heard of false positives, right? It's when you're told you have cancer but you don't. So a false negative is when you hear everything's fine when it really isn't.
We're invested in change. What's happening with us, ourselves? And when I begin to think about those questions, I may be led to ask myself then, so what is the rhythm of my life? How am I giving and receiving power?
I was invited to participate in this. I was like, okay, infrastructure. Let me just quickly Google what infrastructure means. I mean, I know what it means, but I decided to Google it, and there were two definitions that popped up. One, the underlying foundation or basic framework as a system or organization. And then the second definition was the permanent installation required for military purpose. And so two very seemingly contrasting definitions for infrastructure. And so when I thought of the theme, pipes, prisons, and power, did I get that right? That's our theme. I thought of the dual, and granted it can exist beyond a binary, but the dual purposes of these things and how they show up in our lives. And so for me, when I thought of pipelines and pipes, I thought of the school to prison pipeline that many young racialized children experience. And so the school to prison pipeline, as many of you probably know, is this disturbing trend where children are sort of being funneled out of public institutions, public schools, into the juvenile criminal justice systems. And these children tend to be children who are racialized, Black, Indigenous, and poor.
What do we want the seventh generation to be like? So we talk about the seventh generation, we gesture towards it as a way of keeping ourselves mindful of what our actions today will mean for our descendants. But what we found is, in our travels and in our communities, that there wasn't actually a lot of really concrete imagining what that life might be like. We're total science fiction nerds. We love science fiction. We love the way that science fiction opens up your imagination, and also how science fiction can be set 500 years in the future, but still be very much about what's going on right now. So we founded the Initiative for Indigenous Futures with a bunch of partners from around the country to try to create lots of different conversations to kind of make that something that we talk about regularly. This also comes from the interactions we've had with the youth in the workshops, where we found that not a lot of them had thought very much about the future, or when they did think about the future, it tended to be pretty bleak.
Education anticipates change, and when it's at its best, it theorizes change. I do this work within education because it has a material obligation to everyday people. I take the question of how to make change through my systems with every breath, every compression, even my unthought beat of my heart. I have children in this world, and the need for justice will outlast my years.
My offering to us today, and I'm so glad that I'm here because I certainly need to hear this, let me tell you. Take the time. Like, you just have to take the time. You have to. We have to take the time. Otherwise, the work that we're doing is null and void. It's pointless. Because the very point of the work is to create a better space, is it not? To create a space that can outlive us. But we're here now, so we have to live in that deep, dark space. Like, can you imagine cultivating just the act of listening? Listening to yourself, listening to what you see and hear and feel, and just being present and aware. Listening, observing, understanding little by little who you are, or who you're choosing to be. You and I, and we the community, we the people, we the planet, we can choose to stand firm in love. In love. Stand firm in love. That's one of my most sacred offerings that I have to share. Thank you.